Hi, today I've come to Charmouth in Dorset to see the Jurassic Coast. The Jurassic Coast is famous for its Jurassic fossils, which are revealed from the soft stone. This is mudstone shale, and it's what all these cliffs are made of. It's so soft it crumbles in my fingers, and every winter, as the storms lash against the cliffs, they bring down fresh material and fresh fossils, revealing the Jurassic world. This area used to be the bottom of an archipelago of islands, a big warm tropical lagoon like one might find in the Caribbean or in Indonesia. And it was brimming with prehistoric life. Ammonites, belemnites, ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, everything you could imagine, everything that would make a young boy squeal in delight. Amateur and professional fossil hunters alike have been coming here for hundreds of years to find its treasures, and the most famous of them was Mary Anning. The best time to come looking for fossils is the winter. So I've actually come at the worst possible time. It's the summer, it's breathtakingly hot, I am dripping with sweat, and it's also a rising tide when you actually want to be looking for fossils on a falling tide. So I got everything wrong. But also I wasn't exactly coming here to look for fossils, I was coming here to do In Search of England and to just enjoy the day. I mean, I have picked one of the most beautiful days England has ever had. It is stunningly beautiful. The sea is so rarely this colour in England. It's important not to get too close to these cliffs, like I'm doing, because they can fall at almost any time. Just a single boulder falling down could be a massive concussion, if you're lucky. So don't go fossil hunting on the cliffs themselves, go fossil hunting on the beach. Yes, the tide will have dealt with a lot of them, and other fossil hunters will have dealt with a lot more, but it really isn't worth your life. Unless you're me, in which case it's absolutely worth your life is worthless. The fossil hunters pick this beach clean regularly, but you can still get lucky. You can find imprints of ammonites in the mud shale. Woo, hello the sea. Ah, my feet! Ah, cold! Yes, anyway, you can find impressions of ammonites, you can find belemnites. I have been fortunate in the past and found a belemnite and impressions of ammonites. But the best time to come really is in the winter. There are fewer fossil hunters and there's more revealed. Now, I'm not a fossil expert, so I might be wrong on this, but I think that I did find something while I was out here. I think this is a fossilized bivalve of some kind. Again, I could be wrong. I'm not a professional by any means, but this doesn't look like stone. To me, it's got different sound, different weight. It's a fossilized something. In 1945, these cliffs were given to the nation with a few conditions to make sure that they were kept only for pleasure. So there was to be no commercial development save for small kiosks for refreshments. Mary Anning was born in 1799 in a family of 10 in the town behind me, Lyme Regis. Now, at the time, Lyme Regis was already becoming a bit famous for fossils. The locals would sell fossils without really knowing what they were. Ammonites would be sold as snake stones, for example. And they were all considered lucky charms. The Revolutionary Wars in France meant that the small tourist trade in those days became centred on England's south coast. People who would normally have gone to France to spend their leisure time couldn't go over to the continent anymore. And Lyme Regis had become quite a popular retreat, even in the 1700s. Mary Anning's father died when she was 11 in 1810, leaving the family with debts and no significant way to make a living. Mary Anning turned to fossil hunting as a way to gain extra cash. It was dangerous work because fossil hunting is most effective after the storms of winter, before the tide has had a chance to take the fossils away. But Mary had an extreme knack for it, and from a very young age was putting together whole fossil skeletons with unerring accuracy. By the time she was 27, Mary Anning had her own fossil shop in Lyme Regis, and she was regularly selling to the wealthy tourists and the Geological Society of London. As a woman, she was banned from joining the Geological Society herself, and this eventually became quite a cause of bitterness for her. She did the hard work of not only finding the fossils, but also arranging them in a sensible order. She had this uncanny ability to put together ancient life forms from a jumble of bones and correctly identifying which went with which in a way that many of her male colleagues simply couldn't. And when I say her male colleagues, I don't just mean the other fossil hunters from the region, but also the professional fossil hunter, the professional fossil experts. Not necessarily the likes of Richard Owen, but many of the members of the Geological Society. One person whose name I can't remember exactly right now, I'll put it up on the screen, got into a lot of trouble both with Mary Anning and the Geological Society for putting in false fossils to make more accurate and thus, not more accurate, more complete and thus more impressive specimens. And these specimens would sell for hundreds of pounds at a time when someone's life savings could be £300 or £400. She also had a, whoa! Ah, that was the sea. She also did some early foundational work in trace fossils, things that showed where a living creature had been that had been fossilized. Things like footprints and eating tracts, scrapings in the rock that were preserved. Again, if she had been part of the Geological Society, she would be not just a household name as a fossil hunter, but probably a household name as a scientist. Mary Anning was eventually afforded an annuity in the civil pensions list, which gave her some financial security in her later life after she had unfortunately lost her life savings due to, the reports vary, either a bad investment where the investor died or a bad investment where the investor ran away with her money. In her later life, Mary Anning was apparently quite bitter that rich men were profiting from her work, making their names famous by her discoveries and not giving her very much credit, if they gave her any credit at all. And while this has been the case of many fossil hunters throughout Britain's history, where poor labourers would find the bones and some wealthy scholar would come along and describe them and get their name credited as discoverer, with Mary Anning it's particularly painful because she was doing the hard scientific work of accurately gauging their age, putting them together correctly, and identifying them as distinct individual species. All she really needed was to be allowed to publish in the Geological Society, and she would have been the famous scientist, not the men who bought her skeletons. Mary Anning passed away at the tender age of 47 after battling cancer, which of course in those days had essentially no cure. She was in quite a great deal of pain, probably because of the cancer, which led local speculation to be that she was addicted to laudanum or even alcohol. It's quite a sad end for one of Britain's most famous and most rigorous fossil hunters, but her legacy after her death improved quite quickly. She's had fossils named after her. She's had many books written about her, both real biographies and fictionalized accounts. And she's become one of England's folk heroes, one could say. And according to legend, she inspired the tongue twister, "She sells seashells by the seashore." The seashells that she sells are seashells, I'm sure, and all the rest. But that's conjecture. It was a music hall song about a person who had difficulty with tongue twisters. It could have had nothing to do with Mary Anning at all. But it does seem pretty appropriate, doesn't it?